Before we get into the story, leave a comment and let us know what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. The fluorescent lights of St. Catherine's Hospital hummed their usual monotonous tune, casting a sterile glow over the pristine white hallways. Nurse Sarah Mitchell hurried down the corridor, her sneakers squeaking against the polished linoleum floor with each rushed step. Her blonde ponytail swung behind her like a pendulum marking the seconds of her perpetually late existence. In her arms, she balanced a stack of patient files that threatened to topple at any moment, much like her composure on this particularly chaotic Wednesday morning. Sarah had been a nurse for exactly 3 months, a fact that both filled her with pride and terror in equal measure. Fresh out of nursing school, she'd landed this position at one of Manhattan's most prestigious private hospitals, a place where the wealthy came to recover in luxury suites that resembled 5-star hotel rooms more than medical facilities. The marble floors, the original artwork hanging on walls, the quiet hush of money that permeated every corner, it all still intimidated her. She was a girl from a small town in Ohio, where the local hospital had linoleum floors with actual scuff marks and vending machines that only worked half the time. "Mitchell!" The sharp voice of head nurse Barbara Chen cut through her thoughts like a scalpel. Sarah skidded to a halt, nearly dropping her files. Barbara stood with her arms crossed, her dark eyes assessing Sarah with the intensity of a hawk spotting prey. At 45, Barbara ran the VIP floor with military precision, and she had little patience for mistakes. "Yes, Nurse Chen?" Sarah straightened her spine, trying to project competence she didn't quite feel. "Room 405 needs a bed bath. The patient just came out of surgery yesterday and can't manage it himself yet. Can you handle it? Or do I need to send someone more experienced?" The words stung, but Sarah kept her expression neutral. She'd been getting these little jabs for weeks now, subtle reminders that she was the newest, the youngest, the most likely to screw up. "I can handle it," she said firmly, meeting Barbara's gaze. "Good. The supplies are already in the room. The patient's name is Michael Harrison, 32 years old, appendectomy. He should still be fairly groggy from the anesthesia, so it should be straightforward. Don't take too long. We're short-staffed today." Barbara turned on her heel and marched away, leaving Sarah standing in the hallway with her heart hammering against her ribs. A bed bath. She'd done dozens during her training, practiced on mannequins, and supervised real patients under the watchful eyes of her instructors. She could do this. It was basic nursing care, nothing complicated. Just maintain the patient's dignity, work efficiently, and everything would be fine. Sarah deposited her files at the nurse's station and grabbed the supplies cart, rolling it toward room 405. The VIP suites were located in the East Wing, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of Central Park. The rooms here were enormous, each one equipped with a flat-screen television, a plush sofa for visitors, and amenities that made Sarah's tiny studio apartment look like a broom closet in comparison. She paused outside room 405, taking a deep breath to center herself. Through the small window in the door, she could see a figure lying in the hospital bed, still and quiet. The chart hanging on the door confirmed it. Michael Harrison, appendectomy, post-op day 1. She knocked softly, but there was no response. The patient must still be sleeping, which actually made her job easier. Sarah pushed open the door as quietly as possible and wheeled her cart inside. The room was dimmed, the curtains partially drawn to keep out the bright morning sunlight. She could make out the shape of the patient beneath the blankets, dark hair against the white pillow, his face turned away from the door. Moving with practiced quiet, Sarah positioned her supplies, filled a basin with warm water, and gathered the washcloths and towels she would need. Her hands moved through the familiar routine, and she felt her nervousness begin to ease. This was just another task, just another patient. She could do this with her eyes closed. "Mr. Harrison," she whispered softly, approaching the bed. "I'm here to help you with your bath. You're probably still pretty out of it, so just relax and let me take care of everything." No response. The patient's breathing was deep and even, clearly still under the heavy influence of pain medication. Perfect. Sarah dimmed the lights even further and began her work, starting with the patient's face and neck, being careful and gentle. The man didn't stir, which wasn't unusual. Post-surgery patients often slept deeply, especially in the first 24 hours. She worked methodically, professionally, maintaining the sheet to preserve his modesty as she'd been taught, washing his arms, his chest, being careful around the surgical site. Her movements were efficient, but gentle, and she found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the work. "See?" she thought to herself. "I can do this. I'm a real nurse doing real nurse things. No disasters, no drama, just good patient care." She was just finishing with his upper body, about to move on to his legs, when the door burst open with a bang that made Sarah jump so hard she nearly dropped her washcloth into the basin. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The voice was female, shrill with outrage, and accompanied by the clicking of expensive heels on the floor. Sarah spun around to find a woman in the doorway, her face twisted in fury. She was dressed in designer clothes, her dark hair perfectly styled, and her manicured finger pointed at Sarah like a weapon. "I'm sorry, I'm just giving Mr. Harrison his bath. He's post-op and—" "That is not Michael Harrison!" the woman shrieked. Behind her, Barbara Chen appeared, her face pale with horror. Sarah's stomach dropped to somewhere around her feet. She turned slowly back to the patient in the bed, really looking at him for the first time. The man was stirring now, disturbed by the commotion, and as he turned his face toward the light, Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. This was not a 32-year-old appendectomy patient. This man was older, probably late 30s, with sharp, aristocratic features and a jawline that could cut glass. Even groggy and confused, he radiated an aura of power that made the air in the room feel charged. "Where am I?" he mumbled, his voice deep and rough from sleep. "What's going on?" "Mr. Blackwell, I am so sorry." Barbara rushed forward, shooting Sarah a look that could have melted steel. "There's been a terrible mistake." Sarah stood frozen, her mind racing. Blackwell. Why did that name sound familiar? And then it hit her like a freight train. Alexander Blackwell. The Alexander Blackwell. Tech billionaire, venture capitalist, one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. His face had been on the cover of Forbes just last month, and she had just given him a bed bath. The wrong patient. She'd bathed the wrong patient. The absolute worst mistake a nurse could make. The kind of error that got you fired, that got your license reviewed, that followed you for the rest of your career. Sarah wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. Oh God, I'm so sorry, I thought. The room number? I must have... She stammered, backing away from the bed, her face burning with humiliation. Alexander Blackwell pushed himself up slightly, wincing at the movement. His eyes, a striking gray-blue color, focused on Sarah with an intensity that made her want to disappear. "You gave me a bath?" he asked slowly, as if trying to process this information through the fog of whatever medication they had him on. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwell," Barbara interjected smoothly, her professional mask firmly in place, despite the panic Sarah could see in her eyes. "This nurse made a grave error. She will be disciplined immediately, and of course, there will be no charge for any of your care during your stay. We'll also—" "Wait." Alexander held up a hand, his gaze never leaving Sarah's face. "What's your name?" Sarah swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. Sarah Mitchell, sir. How long have you been a nurse, Sarah Mitchell? His tone wasn't angry, which somehow made it worse. She would have preferred anger. Anger she could understand, could apologize for. This calm curiosity unnerved her. 3 months, she whispered, wishing she could somehow rewind the last 30 minutes of her life. A ghost of a smile flickered across his face. 3 months. And in those 3 months, how many wrong patients have you bathed? None. I mean, this is the first I've never. I'm so careful usually. The room number must have been wrong on the chart, or I misread it, or... She was babbling now, words tumbling over each other in her desperation to explain. Alexander leaned back against his pillows, studying her with those penetrating eyes. The woman who had first burst in, presumably his assistant, or perhaps his girlfriend, hovered nearby with her arms crossed, clearly waiting for him to unleash hell on Sarah's head. You know what I find interesting? Alexander said slowly. Despite this rather unusual situation, you were very gentle, professional. I barely woke up. Sarah blinked, not sure if this was a trick. Thank you? That being said, his voice grew firmer. I'd like to know how this happened. I'm in this hospital because I was in a car accident 2 days ago. I have 3 cracked ribs, a concussion, and more bruises than I can count. I'm paying premium rates for a private suite, specifically to avoid this kind of mix-up. Barbara stepped forward again, her face a mask of contrition. Mr. Blackwell, I assure you this is highly unusual. We have protocols in place to prevent exactly this kind of error. I will personally investigate how this happened and ensure it never happens again. See that you do, the woman, definitely his assistant, Sarah decided, snapped. Mr. Blackwell could sue this hospital into the ground for this breach of privacy. Do you have any idea who you just violated? That's enough, Victoria, Alexander said mildly, but there was steel beneath the words. I'm not going to sue anyone. Accidents happen. He turned back to Sarah, who was still standing there like a deer in headlights, praying for a natural disaster to end her misery. However, I think it's only fair that since you've seen me at my most vulnerable, we should even the playing field. What do you say, Nurse Mitchell? How do we make this right? Sarah had no idea what he meant, and from the confused look on Barbara's face, neither did she. Sir, I'll think about it, Alexander cut her off, settling back into his pillows. You're all dismissed. I'd like to rest now. Alone. Without any unauthorized personnel giving me baths. His tone was light, almost joking, but everyone in the room knew it was a dismissal. Barbara grabbed Sarah's arm with a grip that would definitely leave bruises and practically dragged her out of the room. Victoria followed, her heels clicking an angry staccato on the floor. The moment the door closed behind them, Barbara whirled on Sarah. My office. Now. The walk to Barbara's office felt like a death march. Other nurses and staff members stared as they passed, clearly sensing that something catastrophic had happened. Sarah's mind raced with the implications. She'd be fired, obviously. Probably reported to the state nursing board. Her career, barely begun, was already over. She'd have to move back to Ohio, back to her parents' house, back to being the girl who couldn't make it in the big city. All because she'd misread a room number, or grabbed the wrong chart, or somehow gotten her wires so completely crossed that she'd bathed a billionaire instead of an appendectomy patient. Barbara's office was small and efficient, just like the woman herself. She gestured for Sarah to sit, then took her own seat behind the desk, steepling her fingers and fixing Sarah with a look that could freeze lava. Explain, she said simply. Sarah took a shaky breath. I was carrying the files from the morning rounds, and you told me to handle the bed bath for room 405, Michael Harrison, appendectomy patient. I went to room 405, checked the name on the door. It said Harrison. and the patient was asleep, so I— You checked the door? Barbara interrupted. Yes, the chart on the door. It said, Harrison. Barbara's expression shifted slightly, from pure fury to something closer to confusion. She pulled up something on her computer, typing rapidly. Room 405 is Michael Harrison. Alexander Blackwell is in room 504. The number hit Sarah like a physical blow. 504. Not 405. 504. Oh my God, Sarah breathed. I went to the wrong floor. I took the elevator to 4 instead of 5. I assumed. I didn't even think. You didn't think, Barbara repeated, her voice cold. In this profession, Sarah, assumptions kill patients. Do you understand that? Your carelessness could have had serious consequences. It was a bed bath, not medication, Sarah said weakly, then immediately regretted it when Barbara's eyes flashed. Today, it was a bed bath. Tomorrow, it could be insulin given to a non-diabetic patient. Next week, it could be mixing up blood types. The principle is the same. You did not verify your patient's identity before providing care. That is, Healthcare 101, Mitchell. They teach that on day 1. Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. She would not cry in front of Barbara Chen. She would not give her that satisfaction. I know. You're right. I messed up, and there's no excuse. I'll pack my things. Barbara was quiet for a long moment, studying Sarah with an expression that was impossible to read. Finally, she sighed, and some of the hardness left her face. You're not fired. Yet. Sarah's head snapped up. What? Alexander Blackwell has not filed a complaint. In fact, his assistant just called down to say he specifically requested that no disciplinary action be taken against you. Apparently, he finds the situation— She paused, consulting her notes. Amusing. Amusing? Sarah repeated, certain she'd heard wrong. Amusing, Barbara confirmed, though she looked as baffled as Sarah felt. However, that doesn't mean you're off the hook. You're suspended for 3 days without pay while we review your file and the incident. When you return, you'll be on probation for 6 months. Any other mistakes, and you're done. Am I clear? Crystal clear, Sarah managed, relief and humiliation warring in her chest. And, Sarah, Barbara's voice stopped her as she stood to leave. Check your patient IDs, every single time. I don't care if you think you know who they are. If you've seen them 100 times, you check. Every single time. Yes, ma'am. Sarah walked out of the office in a daze. Suspended. Not fired, but suspended. And all because Alexander Blackwell, for reasons she couldn't begin to fathom, had decided not to destroy her career. Why? What possible reason could he have for showing mercy to a clumsy nurse who'd made such an egregious error? She gathered her things from her locker, ignoring the curious stares of her co-workers, and made her way to the elevator. As she waited, her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate, asking how work was going. Sarah let out a laugh that sounded slightly hysterical, even to her own ears. How was work going? Well, she'd bathed a billionaire by mistake, gotten suspended, and somehow still had a job. Just another day in paradise. The elevator doors opened, and Sarah stepped inside, grateful for the momentary solitude. But just as the doors began to close, a hand shot out, stopping them. Victoria, Alexander Blackwell's assistant, stepped into the elevator, her designer heels clicking against the floor. She was probably in her late 30s, with the kind of polished appearance that came from personal stylists and expensive salons. Her navy suit was impeccably tailored, and her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun that somehow made her look both professional and intimidating. Sarah pressed herself against the back wall of the elevator, hoping to become invisible. It didn't work. "Nurse Mitchell," Victoria said coolly, pressing the button for the lobby. "We need to talk." "I've already been suspended," Sarah said quietly. If Mr. Blackwell wants to press charges, he should contact the hospital administration. Victoria's perfectly painted lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it had contained any warmth. Mr. Blackwell doesn't want to press charges. In fact, he finds your mistake rather entertaining. There was that word again. Entertaining. Sarah felt her cheeks burn. I'm glad my complete humiliation is amusing to someone. Don't be so dramatic. Victoria's tone was sharp. You made an error, yes, but no harm was done. Alexander, Mr. Blackwell, has a rather unique sense of humor. He appreciates irony. The elevator descended in silence for a moment, before Victoria spoke again. However, I wanted to speak with you personally, because I need to ensure you understand the importance of discretion. Sarah's head snapped up. Discretion? Mr. Blackwell values his privacy above almost everything else. The fact that you had access to him in such a vulnerable state, even accidentally, means you've seen him in a way very few people have. I need your assurance that you will not speak to anyone about this incident. No friends, no family, no social media posts. Nothing. The threat was implicit, but clear. Sarah straightened her spine. I would never violate patient confidentiality. That's part of my oath as a nurse, and I take it seriously, even when I screw up the patient's room number. Victoria studied her for a long moment, then nodded slightly. Good. Because if any details of this incident were to leak to the press, we would know exactly where it came from, and suspension would be the least of your worries. The elevator reached the lobby, and Victoria stepped out without another word, her heels clicking away across the marble floor. Sarah followed more slowly, her legs feeling like jelly. The autumn air hit her face as she exited the hospital, cool and crisp, a sharp contrast to the stifling atmosphere inside. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, just breathing, trying to process everything that had happened in the span of less than 2 hours. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was her mother calling. Sarah declined the call. She couldn't talk to her mother right now, couldn't explain that she'd managed to nearly destroy her nursing career in record time. Her mother had been so proud when she'd gotten this job, had bragged to all the neighbors about her daughter working at one of Manhattan's most prestigious hospitals. What would she say now? Sarah walked to the subway station, her mind replaying every moment of the disaster. How had she not realized she was on the wrong floor? The layouts were identical, sure, but there were floor numbers everywhere. She'd just been so focused on not being late, on proving to Barbara Chen that she could handle basic tasks, that she'd rushed through without doing the most fundamental check of all, verifying her patient's identity. Stupid, 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 she muttered to herself as she swiped her Metro card and pushed through the turnstile. The platform was relatively empty at this hour, most of the morning commuters already at their offices. Sarah sat on a bench, staring blankly at the tracks, wondering if she should just quit nursing altogether and become a barista or something. At least then the worst thing she could do was mess up someone's latte order. Her phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. Despite her better judgment, she opened it. This is Alexander Blackwell. I got your number from the hospital directory. I hope you don't mind. I wanted to make sure you were okay. What happened wasn't entirely your fault, and I'd hate to think you're beating yourself up over it. Sarah stared at the message, reading it 3 times to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. Alexander Blackwell, Billionaire, had just texted her to make sure she was okay? This had to be some kind of joke. She typed back, her fingers shaking slightly. This is really you? The response came almost immediately. It is. And before you ask, yes, I'm feeling fine. A little sore, but that has nothing to do with your excellent bed bath technique. Very professional. Was he teasing her? Sarah couldn't tell. She wrote back, I'm mortified. I've never made a mistake like that before. I'm so sorry. Stop apologizing. These things happen. Besides, I think the universe was trying to tell me something. What could the universe possibly be trying to tell you through me accidentally bathing you? Sarah typed, then hesitated before hitting send. Was this too casual? Should she be more formal? But he was the one who'd texted her first, so she sent it. That I need to be more careful about who I trust. You could have been anyone, could have had any motive, and I was completely vulnerable. It's a good reminder that I've gotten too comfortable, too careless with my own safety. The message was unexpectedly serious, and Sarah wasn't sure how to respond. Before she could formulate a reply, another message came through. Also, I think the universe might be telling me that I need to lighten up. My assistant Victoria says I'm too uptight. Getting accidentally bathed by a nervous nurse is probably the most spontaneous thing that's happened to me in years. Sarah couldn't help but smile at that. I'm glad my complete mortification could provide you with a life lesson and entertainment. See? Already finding the humor in it. You're going to be fine, Sarah Mitchell. Don't let this shake your confidence. You're a good nurse. You were just having a bad morning. The subway train pulled into the station with a screech of brakes, and Sarah stood, phone still in hand. As she boarded the train, she typed one more message. Thank you for not getting me fired, and thank you for this. You didn't have to reach out. She sat down and watched the city blur past as the train picked up speed. Her phone buzzed once more. I know I didn't have to. I wanted to. And Sarah? This isn't the last time we'll talk. I have a feeling you're going to be very important in my life. Don't ask me why. I just know. Sarah stared at that message for the entire ride home, her heart doing strange things in her chest. What did he mean by that? Was he just being kind, or was there something more behind those words? She wanted to dismiss it as the rambling of a man still on pain medication, but something in his tone, even through text, felt deliberate, purposeful. When she got back to her apartment, her roommate Jessica was already there, working from home at the small kitchen table they'd bought from a thrift store. Jessica looked up from her laptop, took one look at Sarah's face, and immediately closed her computer. What happened? She demanded. You look like you've seen a ghost, or committed a murder. Please tell me you didn't commit a murder. Sarah dropped her bag on the floor and collapsed onto their worn sofa. I bathed the wrong patient. Jessica's eyes widened. You what? I bathed the wrong patient. I was supposed to give a bed bath to a guy on the 5th floor, but I went to the 4th floor instead, and I ended up bathing a completely different person. And it was Alexander Blackwell, the billionaire, and I got suspended. The words came out in a rush, all running together. Jessica was silent for a moment, processing. Then she started to laugh. You bathed Alexander Blackwell? The Alexander Blackwell? The guy who was on the cover of Forbes? The one who looks like he was carved by Michelangelo? It's not funny, Sarah protested, though she could feel her own lips twitching. It's a little funny, Jessica insisted. I mean, it's terrible, obviously. And I'm sorry you got suspended. But come on. Of all the people to accidentally bathe, you picked a billionaire? That's almost impressive in its wrongness. Sarah grabbed a throw pillow and tossed it at Jessica, who dodged it easily, still laughing. Despite herself, Sarah felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. Maybe it was a little funny. In a horrible, career-destroying, want-to-die of embarrassment kind of way. He texted me, Sarah admitted, pulling out her phone. Jessica's laughter stopped abruptly. What? Show me right now. Sarah handed over her phone, and Jessica read through the messages, her expression shifting from disbelief to intrigue to a knowing smile that Sarah didn't trust at all. Sarah Mitchell, Jessica said slowly, drawing out each syllable. This man is flirting with you. He is not, Sarah snatched her phone back. He's just being nice because he feels bad that I got suspended over an honest mistake. Uh-huh. And the part about you being important in his life, that's just him being nice? Jessica raised an eyebrow. That's a line if I've ever heard one, and I've heard a lot of lines. He's probably still on pain medication. He doesn't know what he's saying. But even as Sarah said it, she wasn't entirely convinced. There had been something deliberate about his messages, something that felt less like medication-induced rambling and more like genuine interest. Right, Jessica said skeptically. Well, pain medication or not, you need to be careful. This guy's worth billions. He's probably got a girlfriend or a wife or, 5 girlfriends. Rich guys like that don't actually date normal people. I'm not going to date him, Sarah protested. I'm never going to see him again. He'll check out of the hospital, go back to his penthouse or mansion or whatever, and forget I exist. If you say so, Jessica returned to her laptop, but the smile on her face suggested she thought Sarah was being incredibly naive. Sarah went to her room and changed out of her scrubs, trying to push the entire mortifying morning out of her mind. She had 3 days of suspension, 3 days to figure out if she even wanted to continue being a nurse. Maybe this was the universe's way of telling her she wasn't cut out for this. Maybe she should go back to school, try something else, something where mistakes didn't involve violating Billionaire's privacy. She was just settling onto her bed with a book when her phone rang. Unknown number. Again, against her better judgment, she answered. Hello? Sarah Mitchell? The voice was male, professional, not Alexander Blackwell. Yes? This is James Chen. I'm Mr. Blackwell's personal attorney. He wanted me to reach out to you regarding the incident this morning. Sarah's stomach dropped. So much for no charges being pressed. I understand, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Should I get a lawyer? What? No, James Chen sounded surprised. I'm sorry, I should have been clearer. Mr. Blackwell wanted to make sure you understood that he will not be pursuing any legal action against you or the hospital. He's also requested that the hospital not take any disciplinary action beyond what they've already done. He was quite insistent about that, actually. Sarah sat up straighter. What? He's also asked me to provide you with my contact information in case the hospital attempts to terminate your employment or take any further action. If that happens, I'm authorized to intervene on your behalf. This was surreal. Why would he do that? Mr. Blackwell said, and I quote, "Because everyone deserves a second chance, and anyone who gets that flustered over an honest mistake is someone who genuinely cares about doing their job right." End quote. Sarah felt something warm bloom in her chest. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Ms. Mitchell. Just know that you have support if you need it. I'll email you my contact information. Have a good day. The line went dead before Sarah could respond. She stared at her phone, trying to process what had just happened. Alexander Blackwell hadn't just declined to press charges. He'd actively worked to protect her job. He'd hired his personal attorney to make sure she was okay. Why? She barely knew him. In fact, she'd met him in possibly the most awkward circumstances imaginable. None of this made sense. The next 3 days passed in a strange blur. Sarah tried to relax, tried to enjoy her unexpected time off, but she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. She jumped every time her phone buzzed, half expecting another message from Alexander, but nothing came. She wondered if he'd been discharged, if he was back to his normal life of board meetings and business deals, and whatever else billionaires did with their time. On the morning she was due to return to work, Sarah stood in front of her closet for 15 minutes, trying to decide what to wear under her scrubs, which was ridiculous because no one would see it. But somehow, it felt important to look put together, to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. "You've got this," Jessica said from the doorway, startling her. "You're going to go in there, do your job perfectly, and show Barbara Chen that you're not going to let one mistake define you." What if I make another mistake? Sarah voiced her deepest fear. Then you'll fix it and move on. That's what professionals do. You're allowed to be human, Sarah. You're allowed to mess up, occasionally, as long as you learn from it. Jessica walked over and gave her a quick hug. Now, go show them what you're made of. The subway ride to the hospital felt longer than usual, or maybe that was just Sarah's anxiety stretching time. She kept rehearsing what she would say if people asked about the suspension, how she would handle the inevitable whispers and stares. But when she walked onto the floor, something unexpected happened. Nothing. People greeted her normally, asked if she'd enjoyed her time off, made small talk about the weather. It was as if the incident had never happened, or more likely, as if they'd all been told not to mention it. Barbara Chen was waiting at the nurse's station, her expression neutral. "Mitchell, welcome back. Your assignments are on the board." "And Mitchell?" Sarah braced herself. "Yes?" "Double-check your room numbers. Triple-check. Quadruple-check if you have to." "Yes, ma'am." The day progressed smoothly. Sarah checked and rechecked every single task, verified every patient identity at least twice, and moved through her duties with meticulous care. By lunch, she was exhausted from the mental effort of being hyper-vigilant, but she hadn't made a single error. She was just finishing up her notes when one of the other nurses approached, a woman named Diana, who'd always been friendly. "Hey, Sarah, there's a delivery for you at the front desk." A delivery? For me? Sarah couldn't imagine who would send her something at work. She made her way to the front desk, where the receptionist handed her a large bouquet of flowers. Roses, lilies, orchids, an arrangement that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. The card attached read, "Thank you for the bath. It was the highlight of my hospital stay. Get back to saving lives, Nurse Mitchell. You're better at this than you think. A.B." Sarah felt her face flush as she read the card, tucking it quickly into her pocket before anyone could see. Around her, nurses were already whispering, craning their necks to see who'd sent such an extravagant arrangement. "Secret admirer?" Diana teased. "Something like that," Sarah murmured, carrying the flowers back to the nurse's station. She could feel Barbara's eyes on her, assessing, calculating. But the head nurse said nothing, just raised an eyebrow and went back to her charts. Sarah set the flowers on the counter, unable to stop the small smile that tugged at her lips. Alexander Blackwell was definitely not forgetting about her. And despite every logical reason she should be terrified of that fact, she found herself hoping her phone would buzz with another message. As if summoned by her thoughts, her phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out discreetly, keeping it below the counter level. Flowers arrived safely. They're beautiful, and completely over the top. You didn't have to do that. I know. I wanted to. Are you free this evening? I'd like to talk to you. In person. Sarah's heart rate kicked up several notches. This was crazy. This was inappropriate. This was a billionaire asking her out, or at least asking to meet her, and she should absolutely say no. She typed, "What time?" The address Alexander had sent her turned out to be a small, quiet cafe in the West Village, the kind of place that didn't advertise itself with neon signs, but relied on word of mouth among locals. Sarah had changed out of her scrubs into a simple blue dress and denim jacket, pulled her hair out of its ponytail, and applied just enough makeup to look like she'd made an effort without looking like she was trying too hard. It was a delicate balance, and she wasn't sure she'd achieved it. She arrived 10 minutes early because she was chronically unable to be on time without being early, and stood outside the cafe's window, peering in. It was cozy, with mismatched vintage furniture, exposed brick walls, and soft lighting that gave everything a warm glow. She didn't see Alexander inside, which meant she was the first to arrive. Perfect. Now she could be awkward and nervous while waiting. She pushed open the door, and a small bell chimed overhead. The barista, a young woman with pink hair and multiple piercings, looked up with a friendly smile. "Welcome. Sit anywhere you like." Sarah chose a table in the back corner, giving her a view of the door and a little privacy from the other customers, few as they were. She ordered a chamomile tea she didn't want just to have something to do with her hands, and settled in to wait. Alexander arrived exactly on time, and Sarah's breath caught when she saw him. He was dressed casually in dark jeans and a gray sweater that somehow cost more than her entire wardrobe, she was sure. His dark hair was slightly mussed, and he moved with a slight carefulness that suggested his ribs were still bothering him. But what struck her most was how different he looked from the vulnerable patient she'd encountered. This was Alexander Blackwell in his element, confident and commanding, even in a casual cafe. He spotted her immediately and smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and transformed his entire face. Sarah's heart did a complicated gymnastics routine in her chest. "Sarah," he said as he approached, and the way he said her name made it sound important, significant. "Thank you for meeting me." "Thank you for the flowers," she replied, hyper-aware of how close he was as he sat down across from her. "They caused quite a stir at the hospital." "Good. You deserved something after the week you've had." The barista appeared with a menu, but Alexander waved it away gently. "Just a black coffee, please." Once they were alone again, an awkward silence settled between them. Sarah found herself studying the grain of the wooden table, tracing the patterns with her eyes, anything to avoid staring at him. Though she wanted to stare. Up close, without the haze of panic and mortification, she could appreciate just how striking he was. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and those gray-blue eyes that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed composure. "So," Alexander said finally, leaning back in his chair with a slight wince, "I suppose we should address the elephant in the room." Sarah looked up, meeting his gaze. "Which elephant?" "There are several. There's the 'I accidentally bathed you' elephant, the 'you're a billionaire and I'm a nurse' elephant, and the 'why are we meeting in a cafe like normal people' elephant." He laughed, a rich, warm sound that made something flutter in Sarah's stomach. "I like that about you. You don't dance around things." "I've never been very good at pretending," Sarah admitted. "My face gives away everything I'm thinking. It's a terrible quality in poker, and apparently in nursing, since I couldn't hide my complete horror when I realized who you were." "About that," Alexander leaned forward slightly, his expression growing more serious. "I wanted to explain why I asked you here, and why I made sure your job was protected." Sarah wrapped her hands around her teacup, grateful for the warmth. "I've been wondering about that. You don't know me. For all you know, I'm completely incompetent and make mistakes like that every day." "Are you incompetent?" "No," Sarah said firmly. "I'm a good nurse. I'm careful. I'm thorough. And I genuinely care about my patients. That morning was just... everything went wrong at once. I was rushing. I was stressed. I made assumptions I shouldn't have made." "That's what I thought," Alexander nodded. "When you were giving me that bath, even though I was pretty out of it, I could tell you were being professional, gentle. You weren't rough or careless. And then when you realized your mistake, you were genuinely devastated. That's not the reaction of someone who doesn't care about their work." Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "I cared a little too much. I thought my entire career was over." "It wasn't." Alexander's voice was soft, but certain. "And I wasn't going to let one mistake destroy you. I know what that's like." "What do you mean?" He was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. The barista brought his coffee, and he nodded his thanks before continuing. "When I was 23, I was working at a tech startup, my first real job after dropping out of college. I was brilliant at coding, but terrible at office politics. I accidentally sent an email to the entire company, including our biggest investor, detailing all the problems I saw with our business model. I meant to send it to just my supervisor. Sarah winced. What happened? I got fired immediately. The investor pulled out. The company folded within 6 months. 20 people lost their jobs, and it was my fault. His eyes met hers. I thought my career in tech was over before it began. No one would hire me. I was blacklisted. But obviously that's not how your story ended, Sarah said quietly. No. One person, a mentor I'd met at a conference, gave me a second chance. He hired me for his startup, took a risk on me when no one else would. That company became the foundation for everything I've built since. One act of mercy changed my entire life. Understanding dawned on Sarah's face. So you're paying it forward. Something like that. But there's more to it than that. Alexander hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. The truth is, Sarah, when I was lying in that hospital bed, in pain and vulnerable and scared, even though I didn't fully realize what was happening, I felt safe. You made me feel safe. Do you have any idea how rare that is for someone in my position? Sarah shook her head slowly. I can't imagine your life is anything like mine. Exactly. My life is full of people who want something from me. Money, connections, influence, access. Everyone has an angle. Everyone has an agenda. I can't trust anyone fully because I never know if they're with me or for what I can give them. He paused, his gaze intense. But you didn't know who I was. You were just doing your job, taking care of a patient. There was no ulterior motive, no calculation, just genuine care. When was the last time someone treated me like a regular person instead of a walking bank account? The vulnerability in his voice made Sarah's heart ache. That must be incredibly lonely. It is, he admitted. Which brings me to why I really asked you here. I'd like to get to know you, Sarah Mitchell. Not as a patient and nurse, but as two people who might become friends. Maybe more than friends, if you're interested. Sarah's mouth went dry. You're asking me out? I'm asking if you'd be open to the possibility of spending time together, without the power dynamic of wealth or status. Just you and me, figuring out if we enjoy each other's company. Alexander, Sarah began, then stopped. Can I call you Alexander? Or is it Mr. Blackwell? Please, call me Alex. Only my business associates call me Alexander. And I'd like to think we're past that level of formality, given that you've literally bathed me. Sarah couldn't help but laugh. Are you ever going to let me forget that? Probably not, he grinned. It's the most interesting thing that's happened to me in years. But seriously, Sarah, I know this is unusual. I know I'm asking a lot. You're probably thinking I'm crazy, or that this is some kind of elaborate prank. The thought had crossed my mind, Sarah admitted. But mostly I'm thinking about how complicated this could get. You're a patient at my hospital, technically. There are rules about fraternization. And even if there weren't, our lives are completely different. You live in a world I can't even imagine. So let me bring you into it, Alex said simply. Show you what it's really like. And you can show me what normal life is like, because I haven't had that in over a decade. We can learn from each other. Sarah bit her lip, weighing her options. Every logical bone in her body screamed that this was a bad idea. But there was something in his eyes, a loneliness that mirrored her own, that made her want to say yes. What would this look like? She asked carefully. Us, spending time together. Dinner, maybe. Museums, if you like art. Walks in the park. Normal date things, except I'll probably have a security detail following at a discreet distance. Security? I'm worth several $1 billion, Sarah. I don't go anywhere without protection. But they're professionals. They know how to be invisible. This was insane. This was absolutely insane. Sarah took a deep breath. Okay. Alex's eyebrows rose. Okay? Okay, Let's try this. But I have conditions. Name them. Sarah held up one finger. First, no extravagant gifts. The flowers were beautiful but overwhelming. I don't need, and honestly don't want, expensive things. If this is going to work, we need to be on equal footing as much as possible. Fair enough, Alex nodded. What else? Second, you have to tell me when I'm being ridiculous or out of my depth. I've never dated anyone remotely like you, and I'm going to make mistakes. I need you to be honest with me. I can do that, and you have to do the same for me. Tell me when I'm being too much, too controlling, too billionaire-ish. Sarah smiled. Deal. And third, if at any point this gets too complicated, or we realize it's not working, we end it cleanly. No drama. No hard feelings. Alex extended his hand across the table. Deal. Though I should warn you, I'm very good at getting what I want, and I want this to work. Sarah shook his hand, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, the strength in his grip. I should warn you that I'm incredibly stubborn, and if I think something is bad for me, I won't do it no matter how much money you have. Perfect. Alex's smile was genuine and a little mischievous. I've always enjoyed a challenge. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing more easily than Sarah had expected. Alex asked about her life, her childhood in Ohio, her decision to become a nurse. She found herself telling him things she rarely shared about her father's death when she was 16, about how watching the nurses care for him in his final days had inspired her career choice. In turn, Alex opened up about his own past, the pressure of being a child prodigy, the disappointment of his parents when he dropped out of Harvard, the lonely climb to the top of the tech world. People think being rich solves all your problems, he said, stirring the remains of his second coffee. But it just trades one set of problems for another. Now, instead of worrying about paying rent, I worry about which charities to support, which business ventures to fund, whether the people around me actually like me or just like my bank account. That sounds exhausting, Sarah said honestly. It is. Which is why this, he gestured between them, is so refreshing. You don't want anything from me except honesty. Do you know how rare that is? Sarah glanced at her watch and was startled to realize it was nearly 9. I should get going. I have an early shift tomorrow. Let me give you a ride. Alex stood, then paused. Actually, that came out more presumptuous than I meant. Would you like a ride home? In what, a limo? Sarah teased, gathering her jacket. Town car, actually. The limo is ostentatious. They stepped out into the cool evening air, and sure enough, a sleek black town car was idling at the curb. A driver in a dark suit opened the back door. This is Marcus, Alex introduced. He's been with me for 5 years. Marcus, this is Sarah. She'll be accompanying me occasionally, so please make sure she's on the approved list. Of course, sir, Marcus nodded politely to Sarah. Miss. The interior of the car was as luxurious as Sarah had expected, all leather seats and ambient lighting. As they pulled into traffic, she found herself hyper-aware of Alex sitting beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. Where do you live? Alex asked. Brooklyn. Williamsburg. It's a 4th-floor walk-up that I share with my roommate Jessica. It's small, and the heating is temperamental. But it's home. Tell me about Jessica. So Sarah did, filling the drive with stories about her roommate, her best friend since nursing school. She was so engrossed in a deep, particularly funny anecdote about Jessica's disastrous attempt at making kimchi that she didn't notice they'd arrived until the car stopped. This is me, she said, suddenly nervous again. The evening had been so easy, so natural, that she'd almost forgotten the surreal nature of the situation. Now, sitting outside her modest apartment building with a billionaire, reality came crashing back. Thank you for tonight, Alex said softly, for giving me a chance. Thank you for the conversation. And for being surprisingly normal, he laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. Can I see you again? Maybe this weekend? Sarah hesitated. Part of her wanted to play it cool, make him wait. But a larger part, the honest part, didn't want to play games. Saturday evening. I'm off at 6. Perfect. I'll pick you up at 7. Dress casual, I have something in mind that I think you'll enjoy. Sarah opened the car door, then paused. Alex, thank you. For everything. For protecting my job. For tonight. For being kind when you had every right to be angry. Thank you for giving me something to look forward to, he replied. That's been in short supply lately. Sarah practically floated up the 4 flights of stairs to her apartment, her feet barely touching the steps. She found Jessica on the couch, laptop open, binge-watching some medical drama. How did it go? Jessica demanded immediately, pausing her show. Did he propose? Are you engaged to a billionaire? Can I be your maid of honor? You're ridiculous, Sarah laughed, dropping onto the couch beside her. But it was good. Really good. We just talked, and he was normal, Jessica. Like actually normal, and funny, and kind. So you're seeing him again? Saturday. Sarah couldn't keep the smile off her face. Jessica squealed and pulled her into a hug. My best friend is dating a billionaire. This is insane. What are you going to wear? We need to go shopping. You need new everything. He specifically said dress casual, Sarah protested. I'm not buying a whole new wardrobe. But you could. He could buy you 1,000 wardrobes. That's exactly the point, Jess. I don't want this to be about money. I want it to be about whether we actually like each other. Jessica settled back, studying Sarah's face. You really like him, don't you? Like, already? Sarah thought about it, about the way Alex had looked when he talked about loneliness, about his laugh when she'd joked about the elephant in the room, about the gentleness in his voice when he'd asked to see her again. I think I might, she admitted, which is crazy because I barely know him, and our lives couldn't be more different, and this has disaster written all over it. Or, Jessica countered, it's a fairy tale. The Nurse and the Billionaire. It's like a romance novel come to life. Romance novels aren't real, Jess. Maybe yours will be. The rest of the week crawled by with agonizing slowness. Sarah threw herself into work, double and triple checking every task, determined to prove that the incident with Alex had been an aberration. Barbara Chen watched her like a hawk for the first 2 days, but by Thursday, even the head nurse seemed satisfied that Sarah had learned her lesson. On Friday evening, Sarah was just finishing her shift when her phone buzzed. Alex, how's your week been? Mine has been insufferably boring without accidentally being bathed by beautiful nurses. Sarah grinned at her phone. Smooth. My week has been fine. Uneventful. No wrong patients bathed. Disappointing. I was hoping for another scandal. Are you excited about tomorrow? Nervous, actually. I still don't know what we're doing. That's the point. It's a surprise. But I promise you'll like it. Wear comfortable shoes. Now I'm even more nervous. Good. A little nervous keeps things interesting. Sleep well, Sarah. Dream of me. Your ego is showing, Blackwell. Only with you. Good night. Sarah went to bed that night with her phone clutched in her hand, reading and rereading their conversation, wondering how her life had become so surreal in such a short time. Saturday dawned bright and clear, one of those perfect autumn days where the air was crisp, but the sun was warm. Sarah spent most of the day in a state of nervous anticipation, trying on half her closet before settling on dark jeans, a soft cream sweater, and her favorite brown leather jacket. Comfortable but cute. Casual but put together. At exactly 7 o'clock, her phone buzzed. I'm downstairs. Take your time. Sarah grabbed her purse, checked her appearance one more time in the mirror, and headed down. Jessica called after her. Have fun. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, which means you can do basically anything. Alex was leaning against the town car, looking impossibly handsome in jeans and a dark blue Henley, his hair slightly windblown. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that made Sarah's stomach do flips. You look beautiful, he said simply. You look pretty good yourself, Sarah replied, suddenly shy. So are you going to tell me where we're going? Now, where's the fun in that? He opened the car door for her. But I will say this. I haven't done this in probably 15 years, and I'm excited to experience it again, especially with you. They drove through the city as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Sarah tried to guess their destination based on the route, but Alex had instructed Marcus to take a deliberately convoluted path to throw her off. Finally, they pulled up in front of a building that made Sarah laugh with delight. A bowling alley? You're taking me bowling? Not just any bowling alley, Alex corrected, looking pleased with her reaction. This is Brooklyn Bowl. Live music, good food, and yes, bowling. I haven't bowled since college, and I was terrible at it then. I thought it would be fun to do something where we're both equally likely to embarrass ourselves. Sarah felt something warm bloom in her chest. He'd listened when she said she wanted them to be on equal footing. This is perfect, she said honestly. Inside, the venue was everything Alex had promised. Vintage bowling lanes, a stage where a band was setting up, the smell of pizza and beer mixing with the crash of bowling balls hitting pins. It was loud and chaotic, and completely un-billionaire-like. I reserved us a lane, Alex said, guiding her through the crowd with a gentle hand on her lower back. And fair warning, I'm incredibly competitive, so even though I'm bad at this, I'm going to try very hard to beat you. Oh, you're going down, Blackwell, Sarah grinned. I was on a bowling league in high school. I'm about to destroy your ego. I love it when you get competitive. Alex's eyes sparkled. Let's make it interesting. Loser buys dinner? You're a billionaire, Alex. You buying dinner isn't exactly a punishment. Fine. Loser has to do something embarrassing of the winner's choosing. Nothing dangerous or illegal, but definitely embarrassing. Sarah considered this, then stuck out her hand. Deal. They shook on it, and the game began. It quickly became apparent that Alex had not been exaggerating about his bowling skills, or lack thereof. His first ball ended up in the gutter. His second knocked down only 3 pins. Sarah, meanwhile, had been sandbagging a bit about her high school bowling league. She got a strike on her first try. You hustled me, Alex accused, but he was laughing. I said I was on a bowling league. I didn't say I was bad at it. Sneaky, I like it. The game progressed. They fell into an easy rhythm of teasing and laughter. Alex's competitive nature came out in full force, and he started analyzing his technique, adjusting his stance, taking the game far more seriously than it warranted. Sarah found it endearing, this glimpse of the driven businessman applying his analytical mind to something as trivial as bowling. You know, Sarah said as she waited for her turn, I can see it now. This is how you became a billionaire. You can't stand losing at anything, even bowling. Guilty, Alex admitted, lining up his shot. My therapist says it's because I'm terrified of failure. I say it's because winning feels good. He threw the ball, and miraculously, it was his first strike of the night. He turned to Sarah with a triumphant grin. See? Practice pays off. One strike doesn't win a game, hotshot. But it was closer than Sarah had expected. Alex's competitive streak, combined with his ability to learn and adapt quickly, meant that by the final frame, he'd actually closed the gap significantly. In the end, Sarah won by only 12 points. Good game. Alex extended his hand for a shake, then pulled her into a quick hug instead. You're a worthy opponent, Mitchell. So what's my prize? Sarah asked, still warm from the unexpected hug. What embarrassing thing are you going to do? Alex groaned. I was hoping you'd forgotten about that part. Not a chance. Let's see. Sarah tapped her chin thoughtfully, enjoying his nervousness. I think you should go ask the DJ to dedicate a song to your new girlfriend, Sarah, and it has to be the cheesiest love song they have. We've been on one date, Alex protested. You want me to call you my girlfriend? Those were the terms. Something embarrassing. Unless you want to forfeit? Never. Alex squared his shoulders like he was heading into battle. A deal is a deal. Sarah watched with barely contained glee as Alex walked over to the DJ booth. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she saw the moment the DJ's eyes widened in recognition, then the enthusiastic nodding. A few minutes later, Alex returned, his ears slightly red. It's done. Prepare yourself. For what song? You'll see. A moment later, the DJ's voice came over the speakers. All right, folks, we've got a special dedication here. This one goes out from Alex to his girlfriend, Sarah. Buddy, this is either very brave or very stupid, but I respect it. The opening notes of I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston filled the venue, and Sarah burst into laughter as every head in the building turned to look around for the couple. Alex slid into the seat next to her, shaking his head, but smiling. Happy now? Extremely. Sarah wiped tears of laughter from her eyes. You actually did it. I thought you'd chicken out. I don't chicken out, Alex said with mock seriousness. I'm terrified of failure, remember. As the song played, Sarah became aware that people were indeed looking at them. Some with curiosity, some with knowing smiles. A few even raised their glasses in a toast to the couple. It should have been mortifying, but instead, Sarah found herself relaxing into it, enjoying the absurdity of the moment. You know, Alex said quietly, leaning closer so she could hear him over Whitney's soaring vocals. This is the most fun I've had in years. Thank you for agreeing to this. Thank you for being a good sport about the song, and for choosing something so perfectly normal and unfancy for our date. I wanted you to see that I can be normal, that I'm not always the cold businessman the magazines write about. He paused. I want to be myself with you, Sarah, the real me, not the public persona. Sarah met his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, the hope. I want that too. No pretending, no performing. Just us. Just us, Alex echoed, and something in his expression made Sarah's breath catch. The rest of the evening flew by. They ordered pizza and beer, watched the band play a few sets, and bowled one more game, which Alex actually won, much to his delight. When they finally left the bowling alley, it was after 11, and Sarah's face hurt from smiling so much. I should get you home, Alex said reluctantly as they settled into the town car. You have work tomorrow? Not until the afternoon, thankfully. But yes, I should get some sleep. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, Sarah watching the city lights blur past the window. She was aware of Alex's presence beside her, the warmth of him in the small space, the occasional brush of his arm against hers. When they pulled up outside her building, Alex walked her to the door, despite her protests that it wasn't necessary. Sarah, he said as they stood in the pool of light from the street lamp. Can I see you again? Maybe dinner this time? Somewhere nicer than a bowling alley? I liked the bowling alley, Sarah replied. It was perfect. But yes, dinner sounds good. When? Tuesday. I have a board meeting Monday that will probably run late, but Tuesday I'm free. Tuesday works. They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with possibility. Sarah wondered if he was going to kiss her, wondered if she wanted him to. Decided that, yes, she definitely did. But Alex simply took her hand, raised it to his lips, and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Good night, Sarah. Sweet dreams." "Good night, Alex." Sarah practically floated up the stairs, her hand tingling where his lips had touched it. Jessica was waiting up, naturally, eager for details. "He kissed your hand," Jessica said incredulously when Sarah recounted the evening. "Like a gentleman from a Jane Austen novel? Who is this man?" "Someone who's full of surprises," Sarah said, already replaying every moment of the evening in her mind. Sunday passed quietly, Sarah working her shift at the hospital, with a smile that even Barbara Chen commented on. "You're cheerful today, Mitchell. Did something good happen?" "Just had a nice weekend," Sarah replied, checking vitals on an elderly patient who was recovering from hip surgery. "Well, whatever it is, keep it up. Happiness looks good on you." Monday dragged interminably. Sarah found herself checking her phone constantly, hoping for a message from Alex. When one finally came through during her lunch break, her heart leaped. "Missing you. Is that too forward for someone I've only been on one date with?" Sarah grinned and typed back, "Maybe, but I'll allow it. How's the board meeting?" "Tedious. They're arguing about market share projections, and all I can think about is how much more fun bowling was. Tomorrow can't come fast enough." Sarah was about to reply when her phone rang. Alex's name flashed on the screen. She stepped out into the hallway for privacy. "Hey," she answered, unable to keep the smile out of her voice. "Hey yourself." Alex's voice was warm even through the phone. "Sorry to call during your shift. I just needed to hear your voice. These meetings are slowly killing me." "They can't be that bad. They're discussing tax optimization strategies. I'd rather be back in the hospital getting accidentally bathed." Sarah laughed. "That's a low bar." "Maybe. But it's true." He paused. "Sarah, I know we said dinner Tuesday, but would you be opposed to me stealing you away for the whole evening? Maybe staying out late?" "How late are we talking?" "Late enough that you might want to call in sick Wednesday." Sarah bit her lip. She'd never called in sick for a date before. It felt irresponsible, reckless even. But there was something in Alex's voice, a hopefulness that made her want to say yes to anything. "What did you have in mind?" "That would ruin the surprise, but I promise it will be worth it. And I promise to have you home by a reasonable hour if you really need to work Wednesday." "Let me think about it." "Of course, no pressure." But after they hung up, Sarah found herself seriously considering it. When was the last time she'd done something spontaneous, something just for herself? Working at the hospital was important, fulfilling work, but it was also exhausting. Maybe she deserved one evening of magic. She texted him during her break, "I'm in, but this better be incredible." "It will be, I promise. Dress warm but nice. I'll pick you up at 6. Tuesday seemed determined to test Sarah's patience. Everything that could go wrong at the hospital did. A medication delivery was delayed. A patient's family member got belligerent with the staff, and Sarah accidentally knocked over a full bedpan, resulting in a cleanup that took 20 minutes and left her gagging. By the time her shift ended at 5, she was exhausted and smelly and wondering if she should just cancel. But then she got home and found a package waiting outside her door. Inside was a beautiful cashmere scarf in deep burgundy, along with a note in Alex's distinctive handwriting. "Saw this and thought of you. For tonight, since I told you to dress warm. A." Sarah held the scarf against her cheek, marveling at its softness. It was clearly expensive, probably violated her "no extravagant gifts" rule, but it was also thoughtful and practical. She decided to let it slide. Jessica helped her get ready, insisting on doing her makeup while Sarah showered and changed. "Where is he taking you?" Jessica asked, as she applied eyeshadow with the precision of a surgeon. "I have no idea. He just said dress warm but nice. So mysterious. I love it. You know what? You look happy, Sarah. Like, genuinely happy. I haven't seen you like this since... I don't know if I've ever seen you like this. Sarah looked at her reflection in the mirror, at the sparkle in her eyes, the flush in her cheeks. Jessica was right. She did look happy. It's scary, Sarah admitted, how fast this is happening, how much I already care about him. Sometimes the best things happen fast, Jessica said softly. My parents met and got engaged in 3 months. They've been married 35 years. But they weren't from completely different worlds. So, Romeo and Juliet were from different worlds. They died, Jess. Okay, bad example. But you know what I mean. Don't overthink this. Just enjoy it. At 6 o'clock sharp, Sarah's phone buzzed. Your chariot awaits, Cinderella. Sarah grabbed her coat, wrapped the new scarf around her neck, and headed downstairs. This time, instead of the town car, there was a different vehicle waiting, a sleek silver sports car that looked like it cost more than Sarah's nursing school tuition. Alex stood beside it, looking unfairly handsome in dark slacks and a charcoal sweater under a tailored coat. You didn't strike me as a sports car guy, Sarah said by way of greeting. I'm not, usually. But tonight calls for something special. Ready? Ready. The car's interior was all leather and high-tech displays, the kind of vehicle Sarah had only ever seen in movies. As Alex pulled into traffic, she noticed he drove well, confidently, but not recklessly. So, are you going to tell me where we're going? Sarah asked. Not yet. But I will tell you this. I called in a lot of favors to make tonight happen, and I might have bent a few rules. Nothing illegal, he added quickly, seeing her expression. Just creatively interpret it. You're not making me feel less nervous. Good. Nervous means you care. They drove out of the city, heading north. Sarah watched the buildings give way to suburbs, then to darker stretches of road lined with trees. The city lights faded behind them, and stars began to appear overhead. Are you kidnapping me? Sarah joked, because I should probably text Jessica your license plate number. Smart girl. But no, not kidnapping. We're almost there. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a gate with a small guardhouse. Alex rolled down his window, and the guard peered in, then broke into a wide smile. Mr. Blackwell, everything's ready for you, just like you requested. Thank you, James. I appreciate you opening up after hours. The gate swung open, and they drove through. In the darkness, Sarah could make out the shapes of buildings, paths, trees, and then she saw the sign. Riverside Observatory and Planetarium. Alex, Sarah breathed. Are we? I rented out the observatory for the evening, just for us. The director owed me a favor after I funded their new telescope last year. Tonight, we're going to look at the stars. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. How did you know? Know what? That I've always wanted to see the stars properly. That I used to dream about being an astronomer before I decided on nursing. That my dad used to take me to our local planetarium before he died. Alex pulled into a parking spot and turned to her, his expression gentle. I didn't know. I just thought it would be romantic and private and something we could experience together. But if it has special meaning for you, then I'm even happier we're here. They got out of the car, and a woman in her 60s emerged from the main building, smiling warmly. Welcome. You must be Mr. Blackwell and his guest. I'm Dr. Patricia Martinez, the director. We're so thrilled to have you this evening. Thank you for accommodating us on such short notice. Alex shook her hand. It's my pleasure. And please, call me Patricia. Now, who's ready to see some celestial wonders? The next 2 hours were magical. Patricia guided them through the planetarium, showing them constellations, explaining the life cycle of stars, pointing out planets visible in the night sky through the powerful telescope. Sarah was entranced, asking questions, marveling at the beauty of distant galaxies. Alex watched her more than he watched the stars, a small smile playing on his lips. "You're not looking," Sarah nudged him as they stood at the telescope. "I'm looking at something more interesting," he replied quietly. "That's incredibly cheesy. It's also true." When Patricia finally left them alone in the observation dome, promising to return in an hour, Sarah and Alex stood together under the stars, visible through the open roof. "This is the most amazing date anyone has ever taken me on," Sarah said softly. "And I've had some decent dates. But this is perfect." "I'm glad." Alex moved closer, his shoulder brushing hers. "I wanted to give you something special, something that was just ours." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the universe spread out above them in all its glory. Sarah felt small in the best possible way, aware of her place in the cosmos, but also aware of Alex's warmth beside her, the reality of his presence grounding her. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said finally. "Anything. Why me? Really. I know you said the thing about me making you feel safe, but there are probably hundreds of women who would date you, women who are more your speed, who understand your world. Why choose a clumsy nurse who accidentally bathed you?" Alex was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the stars. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful, honest. "Because you see me. Not Alexander Blackwell, the billionaire. Not the CEO or the tech genius or any of the other labels people put on me. You see Alex, the guy who's terrible at bowling and gets competitive over stupid things and is lonely despite being surrounded by people all the time. You see me, and you're not afraid of what you see." He turned to face her, and in the dim light from the telescope, his eyes were luminous. "When I was lying in that hospital bed, in pain and vulnerable, and you touched me with such gentleness, such care, I felt something I haven't felt in years. I felt human. Not a machine that produces profit, not a commodity to be leveraged, just a person who needed help. And you gave it without hesitation, without calculation." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "Alex." "I know it's fast," he continued. "I know we barely know each other. But I've built my career on recognizing potential, on seeing value where others don't. And Sarah, when I look at you, I see something extraordinary. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. You make terrible jokes. You blush when you're flustered. You care so deeply about your patients that making one mistake devastated you. That's the kind of person I want in my life." Sarah turned to face him fully, her heart hammering in her chest. "I see you too, you know. Not the magazine's version or the Forbes cover. I see the guy who protected my job when he didn't have to, who chose a bowling alley over some fancy restaurant, who rented an entire observatory just to make me smile. I see someone who's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders and pretending it doesn't hurt." Alex reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face gently in his hands. His thumbs brushed across her cheekbones, and Sarah's breath hitched. "Can I kiss you?" he asked softly. "I've wanted to since the moment you walked into my hospital room with that look of absolute horror on your face." Sarah laughed, a breathy sound. "That's a weird moment to want to kiss someone. Everything about us is weird. Why stop now?" "Fair point," Sarah whispered, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, a question being asked and answered. But then Sarah's hands found their way to his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing under her palms, and Alex pulled her closer, deepening the kiss. It was sweet and intense, and perfect. And when they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that she was falling for this man. "Wow," she managed. "Yeah," Alex agreed, his forehead resting against hers. Wow. They stayed like that for a moment, wrapped in each other under the stars, and Sarah thought that if she could freeze any moment in time, it would be this one. When Patricia returned, to walk them back to the main building, she took one look at them and smiled knowingly. The stars do have a way of putting things in perspective, don't they? They really do, Alex agreed, his hand finding Sarah's and lacing their fingers together. The drive back to the city was quiet but comfortable. Sarah rested her head on Alex's shoulder, watching the lights of the city grow brighter as they approached. She felt peaceful, content in a way she hadn't felt in years. "Thank you for tonight," she said as they neared her apartment. "For the stars, for everything. Thank you for saying yes, for giving me a chance." He pulled up outside her building and turned to her. "I know you have work tomorrow, and I know I'm keeping you out late, but I don't want this night to end." "Me neither," Sarah admitted. "But if I'm going to be functional at work, I need at least a few hours of sleep." "Practical as always," Alex smiled. "That's one of the things I love about you. You keep me grounded." Sarah's heart skipped at the word love, even though she knew he probably didn't mean it that way. Not yet. But the possibility hung in the air between them, sweet and terrifying. "Good night, Alex." She leaned in and kissed him softly. "Text me when you get home so I know you made it safely." "I will." "Sweet dreams, Sarah." Sarah walked up to her apartment in a daze, her lips still tingling from their kisses, her mind replaying every perfect moment of the evening. Jessica was asleep on the couch, her laptop still open, but she stirred when Sarah came in. "How was it?" Jessica mumbled sleepily. "Perfect," Sarah said simply. It was absolutely perfect. The next few weeks fell into a pattern that felt both surreal and natural. Sarah worked her shifts at the hospital, and in her off hours, she and Alex explored the city together. He showed her his world. Charity galas where she wore borrowed dresses and tried not to feel out of place. Business dinners where she sat beside him and learned to navigate conversations about market trends and investment strategies. In turn, she showed him hers. Late-night diners, where they served the best pancakes in Brooklyn, the small bookstore where she spent hours browsing, the community center, where she volunteered teaching basic first aid classes. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's quirks. Sarah discovered that Alex was a terrible morning person who needed at least 2 cups of coffee before he could form coherent sentences. Alex learned that Sarah sang in the shower, off-key but enthusiastic, and that she had a weakness for terrible reality TV shows. But they also learned the harder things. Sarah saw firsthand the pressure Alex was under, the constant demands on his time and attention. She watched him navigate a hostile takeover attempt against one of his companies, saw the toll it took on him, the sleepless nights and stress that carved lines around his eyes. And Alex saw Sarah's world too, the emotional weight of her job. He was there the night she lost a patient, a young mother who'd come in after a car accident and didn't make it through surgery. He held Sarah while she cried in his car, her scrubs still on, her eyes red and swollen. "I couldn't save her," Sarah sobbed. "Her kids are going to grow up without their mother, and I couldn't save her." "That wasn't your fault," Alex said firmly, stroking her hair. "You did everything you could. Sometimes that's not enough, and that's not on you. How do you deal with it? The weight of so many people depending on you." "Not very well, usually," Alex admitted. "But having you helps. You remind me that I'm human, that it's okay to not have all the answers." It was in moments like these that Sarah realized how deep her feelings had become. This wasn't just attraction or infatuation anymore. She was in love with Alex Blackwell, with all his complexity and contradiction, his strength and vulnerability. But love brought complications. One afternoon, Sarah was having coffee with some of her nursing school friends when the conversation turned to relationships. "So Sarah," her friend Monica leaned forward with a conspiratorial grin. "Word on the street is you're dating someone. Anyone we know?" Sarah hesitated. She and Alex had been keeping their relationship relatively private, partly for her protection, and partly because the media scrutiny would be intense once it became public knowledge. "I'm seeing someone," she admitted carefully. "It's still pretty new." "What does he do?" another friend, Keisha, asked. "He's in business. Tech, mostly." "Ooh, a tech bro," Monica teased. "Does he wear hoodies and talk about disrupting industries?" Sarah laughed despite herself. "Sometimes, actually." She managed to deflect further questions, but the conversation stayed with her. How long could she and Alex keep their relationship under wraps? And more importantly, did she want to? That evening, she brought it up with Alex over dinner at his penthouse. He'd cooked, or rather, his private chef had prepared the meal before discreetly disappearing, leaving them alone. "I've been thinking," Sarah said, pushing her pasta around her plate, "about us, and privacy, and how long we can keep this quiet." Alex set down his fork. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I'm tired of being a secret. I'm tired of having to deflect questions from my friends, of having to be careful about where we go in case someone recognizes you. I want to be able to hold your hand in public without worrying about photographers." Alex was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "I understand. And you're right. It's not fair to ask you to hide. But Sarah, you need to understand what going public means. The media will dig into every aspect of your life. They'll find out about your family, your friends, your past. People will say terrible things about you online, will question your motives, will accuse you of being a gold digger. It can be brutal." "I know," Sarah said, though hearing it laid out so starkly made her stomach churn. "But I also know that I care about you too much to keep pretending we're just friends when we're in public. I want to be your girlfriend, openly, officially." Alex reached across the table and took her hand. "You are my girlfriend. You have been since that first date, as far as I'm concerned. But if you want to go public, then we'll go public. I just want to make sure you're ready for what that means." "I'm ready," Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. "When?" "There's a charity gala next weekend. It's one of the biggest events of the season, lots of press coverage. If we arrive together, if I introduce you as my girlfriend, the news will spread immediately. Is that too soon?" Sarah took a deep breath. "No. Let's do it." Alex smiled, but there was something sad in his eyes. "You're braver than you know, Sarah Mitchell." The week leading up to the gala was a whirlwind of preparation. Alex insisted on hiring a stylist to help Sarah find the perfect dress, though he was careful to frame it as a practical necessity rather than a gift. "You're going to be photographed by hundreds of cameras," he explained. "The stylist will make sure you feel confident and comfortable. Think of it as armor." The stylist, a woman named Claudia with an intimidating eye for detail, took Sarah shopping at boutiques where there were no price tags, only beautiful gowns that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly salary. They finally settled on a deep emerald green dress that hugged Sarah's curves and made her eyes sparkle. It was elegant without being too revealing, sophisticated without being stuffy. "You look like a princess," Jessica declared when Sarah tried it on at home. "Alex is going to lose his mind when he sees you." But as the gala approached, Sarah's nerves intensified. She found herself Googling what to expect, reading articles about other women who dated high-profile men, the scrutiny they'd faced. It was terrifying. The night before the gala, she couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m, she finally gave up and called Alex. "Sarah?" His voice was groggy with sleep. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice small. "I keep thinking about tomorrow, about all those cameras and people judging me, and I'm terrified I'm going to mess it up somehow." "You won't mess it up," Alex said firmly, and she could hear rustling as he sat up. "Do you want me to come over? It's 2 in the morning. So? I'm not going to let you spiral alone. I'll be there in 20 minutes. True to his word, Alex arrived 20 minutes later, hair mussed from sleep, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking nothing like the polished billionaire the world knew. He climbed into Sarah's bed without ceremony and pulled her in two, his arms. "Talk to me," he said softly. "What's really going on?" "I don't belong in your world," Sarah whispered against his chest. "Tomorrow, everyone is going to see that. They're going to look at me and wonder what you're doing with a nobody nurse from Ohio." "First of all," Alex said, tilting her chin up so she had to look at him, "you're not a nobody. You're a skilled nurse who saves lives every day. You're kind and funny and brave. Second, anyone who judges you based on your job or your background isn't worth our time. And third, I'm the lucky one here, Sarah. Not you. How can you say that? Because it's true. You could have anyone. You could date a doctor at your hospital, someone whose world makes sense with yours, whose hours match yours. Instead, you chose me, with all my complications and baggage. You chose to deal with the media scrutiny and the invasions of privacy. You chose me, and I'm grateful for that every single day." Sarah felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I love you," she said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "I know it's fast, and maybe it's too soon to say it, but I love you, Alex." Alex's breath caught, and for a moment he was completely still. Then he kissed her, deep and thorough and full of emotion. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were bright. "I love you too," he said. "I've been waiting to say it, trying not to scare you off, but God, Sarah, I love you. I think I started falling the moment you looked at me with those horrified eyes, when you realized who I was." Sarah laughed through her tears. "That's such a weird moment to fall in love. We're a weird couple. Why start being normal now?" They fell asleep tangled together, and when Sarah woke up the next morning, wrapped in Alex's arms with the sunlight streaming through her window, she felt ready. Ready for the cameras, for the scrutiny, for whatever came next. Because she had this, had him, had love that felt real and solid and true. The gala that evening was everything Sarah had imagined and more. The venue was a historic mansion on Fifth Avenue, every room dripping with crystal chandeliers and priceless art. Women in designer gowns and men in tuxedos mingled with champagne glasses, the air thick with expensive perfume and the murmur of wealth. Alex picked Sarah up in a limousine, and when he saw her in her emerald dress, his expression made every moment of anxiety worth it. "You're stunning," he breathed. "Absolutely stunning." "You clean up pretty well yourself," Sarah replied, taking in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. "Very James Bond." "Does that make you a Bond girl?" "I think Bond girls are supposed to be more sophisticated and less likely to trip over their own feet." "You haven't tripped in weeks. I think you're cured." As they pulled up to the venue, Sarah could see the line of photographers, the flash of cameras already going off as other guests arrived. Her hands started to shake. "Hey." Alex took her hand, squeezed it gently. "Look at me. We're going to walk in there together. I'm going to keep my hand on your back the whole time, and you're going to smile and be yourself. That's all you have to do. Just be yourself, because yourself is perfect." "Okay." Sarah took a deep breath. "Okay, I can do this." The car door opened, and the world exploded in light. Photographers shouted Alex's name. Cameras flashed in a blinding strobe. Alex stepped out first, then turned and offered Sarah his hand. She took it, letting him help her out of the car, and the photographers went crazy. "Mr. Blackwell, who's your date? Alex, over here, look this way. Is this your girlfriend? What's her name?" Alex ignored them all, his arms sliding around Sarah's waist, holding her close as they walked the red carpet. He leaned down and whispered in her ear, "You're doing great. Just a few more steps." They paused for photos, Alex positioning them both with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Sarah tried to smile naturally, tried not to look as terrified as she felt. And then they were inside, away from the cameras, and Sarah could finally breathe. "That was intense," she managed. "That was the easy part," Alex said wryly. "Now comes the socializing. Ready to meet some of the most boring rich people in Manhattan?" Despite her nerves, Sarah laughed. "Lead the way." The evening was a blur of introductions and small talk. Alex introduced her to business partners, to fellow entrepreneurs, to socialites whose names Sarah recognized from magazines. Most were polite, if coolly curious. Some were genuinely warm. A few were openly hostile, their eyes raking over Sarah with barely concealed disdain. "So you're a nurse?" One woman, dripping in diamonds, asked with a tone that suggested she'd said, "garbage collector." "I am," Sarah said evenly. "I work at St. Catherine's Hospital." "How practical," the woman sniffed before walking away. Alex's hand tightened on Sarah's back. "Ignore her. She's married to a hedge fund manager who's currently under investigation for securities fraud. She's taking out her stress on you." Does everyone here have some kind of drama? Pretty much. Welcome to high society. As the night wore on, Sarah found herself relaxing. Yes, some people were awful, but others were kind. She had a fascinating conversation with a tech entrepreneur about the intersection of AI and healthcare. She laughed at stories from a venture capitalist who'd once accidentally insulted a foreign dignitary. And through it all, Alex stayed by her side, his presence a constant comfort. During dinner, as they sat at a table with several other couples, Sarah felt Alex's hand find hers under the table. He laced their fingers together, and when she glanced at him, he was looking at her with such open affection that her heart squeezed. "You two are adorable," the woman across from them said with a genuine smile. "How long have you been together?" "A few months," Alex replied. "But it feels like longer. In the best way," he added, looking at Sarah. "Young love," the woman's husband chuckled. "Enjoy it while it lasts." "I plan to," Alex said quietly, and something in his tone made Sarah wonder if he was talking about more than just the evening. After dinner, there was dancing. Alex led Sarah onto the floor, pulling her close as a string quartet played something slow and romantic. "Thank you," he murmured into her hair as they swayed together. "For what?" "For being here. For being brave. For loving me. Thank you for making me feel like I belong in this world, even when I don't. You belong anywhere you want to be, Sarah. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." They danced for several songs, lost in their own world despite being surrounded by hundreds of people. And when Alex kissed her there on the dance floor, cameras flashing around them, Sarah didn't care about the photos that would appear in tomorrow's tabloids. She only cared about this moment, about the man in her arms, about the love she felt so strongly it almost scared her. Later, as they were leaving, a reporter managed to slip past security. "Mr. Blackwell, is it true you're dating your nurse? Is this the woman who treated you at the hospital?" Alex's jaw tightened, but Sarah squeezed his hand. "It's okay," she said softly. Alex turned to the reporter, his expression neutral. "This is Sarah Mitchell. She's a nurse at St. Catherine's Hospital. And yes, we met there. She's also brilliant and kind, and patient with my terrible jokes. And yes, we're dating. Any other questions?" The reporter blinked, clearly not expecting such a straightforward answer. "How serious is it?" "Very," Alex said simply, looking at Sarah. "Very serious." In the car on the way home, Sarah's phone started buzzing incessantly. Messages from friends, from colleagues, even from her mother, who'd apparently seen photos already online. "It started," she said, scrolling through the notifications with a mixture of amusement and anxiety. "Regrets?" Alex asked quietly. Sarah looked up at him, at this man who'd come into her life in the most unexpected way, who'd turned her world upside down in the best possible way. "Not even one." "Good." Alex pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "Because I'm not letting you go. Ever. I hope you know that." "Is that a threat or a promise?" "Both," he said, and Sarah could hear the smile in his voice. Over the next few weeks, Sarah learned what it meant to be in the public eye. There were paparazzi photos of her going to work, articles speculating about their relationship, think pieces about class differences and modern romance. Some were kind, some were cruel, and Sarah learned to stop reading the comments on gossip websites. But there were good things too. Alex's public acknowledgement of their relationship seemed to solidify something between them. They stopped hiding, stopped worrying about who might see them. They were simply a couple, navigating life together with all its joys and complications. 6 months after that first accidental bath, Alex took Sarah back to the observatory, where they'd had their second date. They walked through the darkened planetarium, hand in hand, until they reached the observation dome. "I have something to ask you," Alex said, and Sarah's heart started racing when she saw him reach into his pocket. "Alex, wait, let me say this," he interrupted gently. "Sarah Mitchell, you walked into my life by accident, literally. You made a mistake that turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. You've shown me what it means to be truly seen, to be loved for who I am rather than what I have. You've made me laugh. You've challenged me. You've stood by me through everything. And I can't imagine my life without you in it." He dropped to one knee, and Sarah's hands flew to her mouth. "I know we haven't been together that long. I know some people will say we're rushing. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Sarah, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you?" Through tears, Sarah nodded. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." Alex slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple band with an emerald stone that matched her eyes, and pulled her into his arms. They kissed under the stars, and Sarah thought that this moment, like that first night here, was one she wanted to freeze in time forever. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too. My beautiful, clumsy nurse who changed my entire life. Are you ever going to let that go?" "Never," Alex grinned. "It's our origin story. Every superhero needs one. We're not superheroes. Speak for yourself. You save lives every day. That makes you a hero in my book." And as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms beneath the infinite sky, Sarah realized that sometimes the best stories begin with a mistake. Sometimes the wrong room leads to the right person. Sometimes accidentally bathing a billionaire leads to a love story for the ages. She couldn't wait to see what came next. What did you think of their story? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what's your rating? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories, and check out more emotional stories by clicking on the end screen.